here's an argument for you. A giant Marilyn Monroe sculpture has prompted protests in California, with many people feeling it's highly offensive and promotes misogyny and upskirting.
It's 26 feet tall, made of stainless steel and aluminium, and it portrays the famous image of Marilyn, of course, when she was wearing the white dress and standing over a subway grate in the film The 7-Year Itch.
It's in this clip from the film 7-Year Itch that we see Marilyn's dress blow up with the breeze from the subway. And some people argue that Tom Ewell looks at Marilyn in quite a sexualized way after the dress blows up.
Oh, do you feel the breeze from the subway? Isn't it delicious?
Sort of cools the ankles, doesn't it? Well, what do you think would be fun to do now?
I don't know. It's getting pretty late.
Well, a petition set up in protest against the statue argues that the image is misogynist and hypersexualized. So, should it be put in the bin bag of history?
Well, joining us to discuss this is Marilyn Monroe impersonator SuZie Kennedy, who says it's not upskirting, it's just a movie scene, and journalist Olivia Petter, who thinks it's not exactly the most respectful way of honouring an icon. Good morning to you both. Is it, then, the pose or the fact that it is a 26-foot tall representation of the pose that is offensive, Olivia?
Well, I think it's a combination of the two. You know, thinking about the pose, for starters, obviously, if we look at Marilyn's character in that film, she is completely an object of male desire. She has no autonomy herself. She is purely a sexual object. So, you know, while that film is a very famous film and Marilyn was an icon, it's very of its time. But I think the real issue here is the fact that it is a 26-foot tall statue that encourages tourists to run in between her legs and take a photograph under this woman's dress. And that is incredibly offensive and wildly out of touch when we consider that upskirting is a serious crime with seriously psychological consequences for victims.
Have either of you actually seen the statue in person?
I was there when it was first came to Palm Springs, and I did news programmes, and I never saw anybody upskirting it. What I saw is joy. Everybody was so excited. It's Americana. It's a piece of movie history. Everybody, I've been all over the world doing this job, and people who don't even speak English, they'll go to me, you... Everybody, and but nobody feels...
OK, so I'm sorry to interrupt. It's only that when we see you doing it here in the studio, when we see the film scene, the shot is very much on sort of the top of you and not underneath the skirt. And I know you say that you didn't see anybody upskirting, but it obviously skims the edge of the skirt.
Yeah.
But the statue is so big, and clearly... It almost encourages people to go underneath. And that is very uncomfortable when upskirting is now considered, you know, something you just simply don't do, criminalised.
I think you're always going to find people, whatever statue you have of anything, even if you go to a museum and you see Michelangelo's David, you're going to get somebody take a picture that's lewd and turn anything artistic into something. It doesn't mean we should get rid of Michelangelo's David, because there's one person who sees bad in something.
Olivia, that's a very good point. There are plenty of nude statues. So, you know, we know that at the time she was a sexualised figure, you know, very beautiful woman. In fact, lots of people see her as a body-positive icon because she wasn't the super skinny kind of image of perfection we're all trying to get to now. So why is she any different, this statue, any different to a nude or David?
I think it's a bit different with Marilyn because we have to remember that while she, you know, on the exterior, she appeared to be this super confident sex symbol, we know that, you know, inwardly, Marilyn had a lot of turmoil. She suffered from depression, she suffered from addictions to drugs and alcohol. But I think the main issue here is that it is a ginormous statue that encourages people to take a photograph of themselves underneath her dress, and that is not the most respectful way to honour her.
Hang on, you're saying it encourages people to take a picture of themselves underneath her dress? There's no evidence that that's actually the case.
I think the thing is, it is a giant image, it is a giant statue, and a lot of people will come to see that statue and they'll recognise the image, because of course they would, but they're not going to know
if
who
you want
she is,
a decent picture of yourself with a 26-foot statue, you're not going to stand underneath it, actually. You're going to stand some distance away from it, aren't you?
You'd like to think so, but I think a lot of people will not necessarily know the
Which
context.
begs the other
they will run
question,
underneath.
getting into rather sort of technical detail, is what is there in that statue underneath the skirt? SuZie, you can probably enlighten us. I mean, is there sort of stuff to be offended about there?
No, there's a big pair of Bridget Jones pants, and you can't see anything. It's just a flat white surface.
So like running shorts?
Yeah, like,
Running pants,
you know, big knickers. You'll see more than that on the beach. But to take her point about what she said, Marilyn Monroe is a person in turmoil, I don't always like Marilyn portrayed as a victim. This is a woman that came from having no father figure. Her mother was put into an institution, and she was in different foster families. Her dream was to be loved and to be famous. And here she is with a 26-foot statue that another woman and women are campaigning to tear down. If anything, we should be building her up.
Yeah, but I wonder whether
down.
she would want herself to be photographed from underneath. I mean,
Well,
that's a different
In
thing,
all fairness,
isn't it?
we cannot say that people are photographing her. If the odd person does that, I've been there. I've seen the reaction of people when they see it. And Marilyn Monroe is a very clever woman. She knew exactly what to do, and she sung Happy Birthday to Mr. President. She left the film contract. She walked out on Hollywood. She knew how to manage her image. You can't always pick how you're going to be remembered. But she's remembered for that.
Sadly, we've lost Marilyn Monroe. It is just a statue. Do you think it hurts anybody?
I think it does. I think, you know, ask any woman who has been a victim of upskirting, you know, regardless of whether there is a white mark there or not. You know, upskirting is a very serious crime, and it can be when someone takes a photograph under your dress, and it can be whether you're wearing underwear or not. It doesn't, frankly, matter. I don't think Marilyn
this isn't
would have
about
wanted
Marilyn. This is about you. So you think this is a tribute to Marilyn Monroe. Olivia, you think this is a statue to a crime.
Essentially, yes, and I don't think it's the most respectful way of honouring this Hollywood icon. You know, Marilyn did that pose in that film. She wasn't expecting people to run underneath her dress and take photographs of her.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Olivia Petter, SuZie Kennedy. Thank you, Marilyn.